Hey guys, and welcome back to Connor Reads. Today we have read, well, what I've read today is Sentence by Daniel Genis. This book was incredible. What I'm going to do today, the layout is I'm going to go through a brief summary with no spoilers. Then I'm going to jump into some things I absolutely loved and then the things I didn't love so much about this book. And then finally just finish up with my recommendation. So let's hop into it. So as the title suggests, Daniel Genis, it's a biography, and essentially what he's doing is writing about his time in prison. Now, the first thing I want to say is most books or documentaries or movies about prison, their goal is to shock you and create like a horrible fantasy world. And although it is oftentimes shocking, a lot of the time it is a fantasy world. Like, you can't really imagine it. It just seems so evil and satanic inside of there. And I'm not arguing that it isn't. All I'm saying is that this is slightly different. Daniel, he briefly details his addiction that leads to the crimes he commits that hands him the 10-year sentence. And then he goes through very objectively and essentially goes through all of his experiences, findings, and lessons from 10 years in prison. Now, a huge part of this book is that he actually read over 1,000 different books during those 10 years in prison. And unless my math is completely incorrect, it really equals, a book read between 3 and 4 days. And they aren't small books that he's reading by the sound of things. So during that period of time, we follow him navigating 4 maximum security prisons, dozens and dozens of named characters, some friends, some enemies, some both, and then the thousands and thousands that make up New York State's prison population, and really just his findings from watching them and interacting with these people and living as a part of them much too closely for 10 whole years. So let's hop into what I loved about this book. The first thing that I really loved about this book, and it was slightly different to any book I've read in this sense, is that although it was loosely in chronological order, like it started at the start and it ended at the end, outside of that, time wasn't really a factor. It wasn't so much a story he was telling as he was essentially trying to put across what he'd witnessed on certain topics. So the book is organized by topic. It jumps forwards and back in time, but with no real purpose for having done that. The time doesn't really relate to the story and the findings, and it was really interesting. One big benefit of the book doing that is you really got all of the information around one topic, or most of it anyway, just together in one chapter, meaning that I could read that chapter, relatively long chapters, and I had enough time to let those thoughts and ideas and lessons that Daniel had taken from them and that he was trying to impress on me, and even maybe some that I took from it that he didn't intend, I had that marinating, and I really got to have a full scope of that topic in his mind's eye. And of course, there are running themes and longer lessons throughout the course of the book, but it was such an effective way to essentially tell a story and share his messages and lessons. And I know that one of Daniel's big loves when it comes to authors, same with a lot of people, is Dostoevsky. And I've been led to believe that he does a couple of his stories and books in that way. And they're classics. Dostoevsky is obviously a fantastic writer, and his books have been added to my to read list because of it. Second thing that I loved is he's clearly a well-educated man even before he goes into prison, but having read over 1,000 books on tons of different topics, almost every single page in this book is punctuated by books that he read that related directly to that topic and his findings, and ones he loved and some he didn't quite love. And what that meant is my to-read list has grown by a huge amount of books. And he doesn't even mention all the ones he read, so that he picked out the ones that he was most affected by and that left an imprint, or that he just enjoyed the most. So I really just got someone's Goodreads list essentially, and someone who's reading was one of the only outlets for 10 years. So I would assume he's got some amazing, maybe not taste, but amazing perspective on books and understanding what is good and what isn't. And that was incredible. A lot of these books I probably would have never heard of if I didn't read this book. So really, he's done a service to reading and literature as a whole with his advertisements of incredible works for anybody who reads it. The third thing, and probably my favorite thing about this book, is the objectiveness of it all. Everything that Daniel draws a conclusion under that he thinks is definitive really does seem to be backed up by pretty objective evidence. It will have multiple examples, really clear reasons for his conclusions drawn, and that was really refreshing. Now, obviously, Daniel is a person. He sees the world through his own lens and his own perspective, and he does give some opinions, but those opinions are nearly always obviously opinions. They're afterthoughts at the end of a statement, and it's pretty clear that he doesn't have any evidence for those, and he makes that clear as well. So I would like to say it's probably one of the most objective books I've ever read, especially considering it is technically a biography of his life, an autobiography, sorry. So incredible. I felt like it was really clear, very concise, and he seemed to have a very tranquil hindsight view on things that was almost peaceful to read. The fourth thing that I really loved about this book, well, fourth big takeaway anyway, is, like I said before, Daniel is clearly a well-educated person before he even reads all of these books. Like, he's a college graduate, knows several languages, and studied French and history at a good college. But I think the breadth and the depth of which he reads and topics that he reads really gives him unique perspective on some huge topics that he outlines in this book. And these topics are something that affect me and you in the everyday world, and they're quite polarizing and emotional, and he has to deal with them inside of a very polarizing and emotional place, which is an overpopulated New York maximum security penitentiary. So he covers things such as love, death, race, mental health, and how that is affected inside of prison and jails for some of the most vulnerable and weak people in our society. And as you would imagine, he draws some incredible conclusions that we could utilize in day-to-day life from these topics. But what amazed me a little bit more was not just the fact that he was able to draw such amazing conclusions from such difficult and I don't know, deep topics. There were some topics that didn't on the surface seem as deep. Topics like working out, or eating food and meal times, or cooking, and those seem to be, or personal appearance. And on the surface, those seem to be really bland topics, but the level of detail and the messages and human psyche manages to pull out of those topics is incredible. Now, obviously, in prison or jail, not that I've ever been, those are much bigger parts of somebody's life, you know, because there isn't that much to do. But the depth of the knowledge and information and learning he's able to take from those topics were incredible. I don't know how many pages I read just on meal times or just on working out, and I was hooked, absolutely hooked at the nuances of what everything meant. Because I'm a gym goer myself, obviously not as much as these guys, but you know, I don't think about it that much. I go in and do my workout and I leave, and just the depth of such a simple such a simple topic in prison was amazing. So what did I dislike? I'll be honest, not much. I kind of avoided learning about prison. I did my college my college thesis on does prison work, and that was in the UK as a rehabilitative tool. And my answer was actually, you know, no, it's worse than no. It actually drives people in the other direction. And since then, I wasn't too interested in learning much more about prison. But, you know, one of my goals was to read outside of the genres I was real comfortable with, and this was amazing. I can't think of any huge dislikes, and it's hard to think of dislikes for, you know, somebody's autobiography anyway. So would I recommend this book? 100% yes. I think this book will give you, you know, 305 pages of a life that hopefully you never have to live, but will be richer for Daniel's experience inside of there. His metaphors are incredible. His writing style is sometimes funny, but without being meaning to be so humorous, I believe anyway. He's extremely intelligent. You'll be able to see lessons for your everyday life, and it will just be so eye-opening as to how some people are forced to live, and oftentimes for crimes that definitely deserve it, but sometimes for crimes that didn't as well. So go out there, pick yourself up a copy, and you won't regret it.